We
Yeah,
have the worst inflation we've had in 100 years. They say it's 48 years. I don't believe it. I think we have the worst. They
yeah,
don't include a lot of the items that should be included, you know.
yeah. Well, it's just from government overspending and not spending taxpayer money
Yeah,
effectively, and having just like so many departments you can't even name them all. And what Millet is doing is he's cutting government spending. He's simplifying things. He's having putting in regulations that make sense. And I and we're Argentina overnight is experiencing a giant improvement
that's
in
right.
prosperity. But it's also a lesson for the United States, which is that um, Argentina used to be one of the most prosperous countries in the world. Um,
Right.
in the like in the 30s, 40s, and because of bad government policy, it ruined the country. And if you take Venezuela, for example, Venezuela should be incredibly prosperous. They have phenomenal reserves of everything, oil, everything, and it should be prosperous. But if the government's wrong, it impoverishes the people. And so I think we should not be complacent in the United States in thinking that and taking our prosperity for granted, because if with bad government policy we can run the country into the ground, and that's just something people should bear in mind. Don't take prosperity for granted.
Well, think of education. So we're ranked at the bottom of every list of the top 40. We're ranked number 40, number 38. Uh, Norway, Switzerland, Sweden, different countries are ranked good. Actually, China's pretty close to the top. They're a top 6 or 7, but we're ranked at the bottom, almost at the bottom, 38, 39, 40. In other words, horrible. And yet we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world. So we spend more. And what I'm going to do, one of the first acts, and this is where I need an Elon Musk. I need somebody that has a lot of strength and courage and smarts. I want to close up Department of Education, move education back to the states, where
Yeah,
where states like Iowa, where states like Idaho, not every state will do great, because states that basically aren't doing good now. You look at Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. He he's terrible. He does a terrible job. So he's not going to do great with education. But of the
yeah,
50, I would bet that 35 would do great, and 15
yeah,
of them, or 20 of them will be as good as Norway. Norway is considered great. You can name them. I mean, they're so good. Some of
yeah.
these countries are so good. But if you go into some of these really well-run states, we have states that don't know what debt is. We have states that have low taxes, no debt, everybody working. They're really well run,
Sure.
and maybe they have certain advantages in terms of location, in terms of the land, or the sun, and the water and the whole thing. There are a lot of advantages that some people have. But if you moved education back to the 50, you'll have some that won't do well, but they'll actually be forced to do better, because it'll be a pretty bad situation.
Yeah.
But if you think
Well,
about it,
yeah,
you'll have some
yeah,
of
yeah,
these states. I'll bet you'd have 30, 35 states. It'll be much better. And you know what it'll cost? Less than
yeah,
half what it is in Washington. And
yeah.
these people don't care
Well,
about the
yeah.
students in these, faraway states. And it'd
Well,
be unbelievable.
yeah. I think you're making a good point in that if the states have to if each state has to compete against other states, then people will
That's
naturally
right.
move to states where it's better.
Well, like
Um,
California, as we said, it's a badly run state. I could go through it. I got so many friends that are in those states, even if they're Democrats. I hate to mention certain states, but Illinois is badly run with Pritzker. He's a real loser. But
yeah,
but some of these places are just badly run. But it's almost going to force them to run better, and they won't do it good initially. But you're not going to do worse than you're doing right now. And I would say that
yeah,
the cost, you would cut your cost by 50 or 60%. And you'd have a little
yeah, yeah,
monitor. You want to make sure they're teaching English, as an example. Give us a
yeah.
little English, right?
Sure, yeah.
Right?
No, but I mean, to what? I mean, some of these governors are doing so badly. I mean, they got so many people moving out of their state. They should get U-Haul Salesman of the Year award because they're driving so much U-Haul
It's
sales.
actually
It's just
amazing.
people moving out.
Isn't it amazing to you as a businessman that they can even survive? Like Illinois, so many people are leaving, and you wonder, how do they survive? I mean, how do they survive? Uh, I saw where you left California and you moved to Texas. Texas does a great job. But, you know, I
Yeah.
mean, I just wonder, how do these states survive when big businesses, a big oil company just left California, as you know, and they moved to Texas. How do these big states survive when they lose so many businesses and their taxes are already really high? You know, the taxes are among the highest
Yeah.
taxes. You almost wonder, how do they continue on? And in many cases, the governors don't do a good job in their crime-ridden places. You wonder, how do they continue to just go on? It's not
Well,
a good
I think there's.
situation.
I mean, I think the only thing that's going to force some of these states to change is if they risk bankruptcy and they're not getting bailed out by the federal
Right,
government.
right. Well,
That's
you're
the
going to
only thing
have
that's going to
that.
get them to change.
You remember the
Yeah.
area in California where they had that, where I guess somebody had sticky fingers and they stole a lot of money, and they went into a form of chapter, and it was very
Yeah.
nasty for
Yeah.
a period of time. But now it's probably the most popular place in all of California. So you know, at some point, something like that may have to happen. But the problem is, you can't penalize people that loan money to the state when you have incompetent people like a Pritzker. Look, the family didn't want him in the family business, and then he ends up being governor of Illinois. So you know what, is he going to be? Is he going to be a great governor? And you know, you have people. I could name every one of them. I got to know every one of
Yep.
these, and some are very good, and some are just horrible.
Well, I think I mean, the larger point here, too, you know, as you're saying, like a lot of people are concerned about the economy, a lot of people are concerned about inflation, and inflation is effectively a tax on people that save money,
Yeah.
and for people that are working day to day, it's just a form of taxation. And if we can solve the government spending problem, we'll solve the inflation problem, which means people will have a better standard of living, and
Yeah.
that's a really big
Well, the
deal.
people that got hurt worst are the people that did it the way they were taught to do it all through, you know, their younger life and their young life and their whole life. The people that saved money and then they got no interest on their money and inflation destroyed them. And frankly, they were almost better off if they didn't do anything like that. I mean, those people have been absolutely decimated, and we're going to bring those people back and help those people. We've got to get the prices down. You know, when I look at bacon costing 4 or 5 times more than it did a few years
Sure.
ago, when you look at some of the food products in grocery stores, people go, they can't believe it. They used to be able to buy a whole cart, and today, you know, a lot of people just don't have the money. They go in and they can't buy anything. They look at
Yeah.
it's sticker
I
shock.
think
They call it
yeah.
sticker shock, right?
I think it really just comes, like I said, I think it just comes down to really, I guess, two things, which is that if you solve government overspending, you solve inflation, which improves living
Right.
standards of the average person, and then if you deregulate, like have sensible regulations, so because a lot of the regulations are nonsensical and cause the cost to be extreme for no reason, but unless you've got effective deregulation, like Reagan did a great job on deregulation in the 80s, but it's been 40 years since we had
That's right.
anyone really. I mean, during your administration, we made some progress, but I think there's an opportunity to make, I think, radical progress with sensible regulation.
Yeah.
And if
Well,
it was,
Elon,
those two things, yeah, those are the big deals.
we set a record. We did more deregulation and more restrictions on all of the different businesses than any other president. Remember, I had the rule for everyone we put in, you have to get rid of 10 or 12. And we did
Yes.
radical cuts on all of that. And a lot of that's being put back by this administration. And we did radical cuts on things that weren't necessary. But we were all set. You know, we had the best economy ever maybe in the world. And then what happened is COVID came in, and we had to focus on that, and nobody knew what it was. And I always say I got good marks on economy, good marks on military. We knocked out ISIS. We did so many different things. We rebuilt. But, you know, I never got the credit that we really deserved on what we did with COVID. We never got the credit. But had that not happened, a gift from China, from Wuhan, came in from Wuhan, the Wuhan labs, and I always said it, and it turned out to be right. But had that not happened, we were set to start reducing debt. We were going to reduce taxes further. I gave the largest tax cuts, and we were going to reduce taxes still further for middle income people, not only businesses. But we did it for businesses because they're the ones that's why we had the great job numbers. But we were set to really start reducing debt. And, we're sitting on the biggest pile of liquid gold anywhere in the world, bigger than Saudi Arabia, bigger than Russia. And we were going to drill, and we were going to make so much money. We were going to supply Europe with oil. I had stopped the Russian pipeline, and we were going to supply them with oil and gas. We were going to make a fortune. And then the COVID came in, and we really had to divert. Then what happened is when they came in, we kept a lot of businesses alive. If I didn't do what we did, we would have had a 1929 type depression. But the problem is when Biden came in, he got trillions of dollars and just started spending it stupidly. You didn't need it anymore. We got over that bad period where everybody was dying and it was just not a good period. Interestingly, during his administration, many more people died during his administration of COVID than during my administration, and we really got the brunt of it. But people don't realize more people died during his administration than ours. But it diverted us from doing what I wanted to do. But we had the greatest for almost 3 years. We had the great, and that probably better than anybody. So many of your friends said to me, the best years we've ever had in business were during the Trump years, and also said that African American, Hispanic American were so incredible. They were having the best. Asian American women, men, young people without a diploma, young people that graduated from the best colleges, from MIT, from the Wharton School, from all of the great colleges, Harvard. They were doing better, and people without a diploma were doing better, and everybody was happy. And then COVID came, and we had the problem is they spent trillions and trillions of dollars. They wasted. They shouldn't have taken any money, and we wouldn't be having inflation right now, which is killing our country.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I should probably say something about maybe my views on climate change and oil and gas, because I think it's probably different from what most people would assume. Because my views are actually pretty, I think, moderate in this regard, which is that I don't think we should vilify the oil and gas industry and the people that have worked very hard in those industries to provide the necessary energy to support the economy. And if we were to stop using oil and gas right now, we would all be starving, and the economy would collapse. So it's I don't think it's right to sort of vilify the oil and gas industry, and the world has a certain demand for oil and gas, and it's probably better if the United States provides that than some other countries. Sure. And it would help with prosperity in the U.S. And at the same time, obviously, my view is like we do over time want to move to a sustainable energy economy, because eventually you do run out of. I mean, you run out of oil and gas. It's not there. It's not infinite. And there is some risk. I think the risk is not as high as a lot of people say it is with respect to global warming. But I think if you just keep increasing the parts per million in the atmosphere long enough, eventually it actually simply gets uncomfortable to breathe. People don't realize this. If you go past 1,000 parts per million of CO2, you start getting headaches and nausea. And so we're now in the sort of 400 range. We're adding, I think, about roughly 2 parts per million per year. So I mean, it still gives us. So what it means is like we still have quite a bit of time, but so there's not like we don't need to rush, and we don't need to stop farmers from farming or prevent people from having steaks or basic stuff like that. Like you can leave the farmers alone.
I agree. How crazy is that? Where I mean, you have farmers that are not allowed to farm anymore and have to get rid of their cattle, and the whole world is a little crazy. But it's largely taken its lead from us. I do say though, I've heard in terms of the fossil fuel, because even to create your electric car and create the electricity needed for the electric car, fossil fuel is what really creates that at the generating plants. And, so you sort of can't get away from it at this moment. I mean, someday you might be able to, but I do hear we have anywhere from 100 to 500 years left. much of it hasn't even been found yet.
Yeah.
But there are tremendous, like Anwar. I got Anwar in Alaska approved. Ronald Reagan couldn't do it. Nobody could do it. Everybody tried. Nobody could do it. I got it approved. The first thing that Biden did was unimprove to get rid of it. He ended it. His secretary went in and she ended it. And what a disgrace. That's Anwar. That's bigger, or they think it could be bigger than Saudi Arabia in Alaska. Could be bigger than Saudi Arabia. But they went in and they terminated it. And I'll get it going very quickly, because not only is it big for Alaska, I mean, you talk about economic development, that for the United States, I mean, that is, they say bigger than Saudi Arabia or the same size, and pure, really good stuff. And, they end it. So I think we have, perhaps hundreds of years left. Nobody really knows. But during that time, something will come around that will be very good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and my estimate would be, a little more aggressive than that. But it's not the sort of like we're all going to die in 5 years stuff. That's obviously BS. But I mean, my view is, like, if you just look at sort of the parts per million that increments every year, you get sort of 2 or 3 parts per million every year of CO2. I mean, I think some of that it's problematic if it accelerates, if you start going from 2 or 3 to say 5, and then there may be some situations where you get just a step change increase in the CO2. And I think we don't want to get too close to 1,000 ppm, because like that's actually makes it uncomfortable to breathe. Like just existing in 1,000 ppm CO2 is uncomfortable. That's like that's considered like an industrial hazard,
right?
Just so it's that's actually, you start getting headaches and stuff. So it's even without global warming, it's not comfortable to live. So you don't want to get too close to that. But I mean, I think we've got. I think we want to just move over, and like, and if I don't know, 50 to 100 years from now, we're I don't know, mostly sustainable. I think that'll probably be okay. So it's not like the house is on fire immediately, but I think it is something we need to move towards. And on on balance, it's probably better to move there faster than slower. But like I said, without vilifying the oil and gas industry, and without causing hardship in the short term, I think this can be done. Without but people can still have a stake, and they can still drive gasoline cars, and it's okay. It's like, it's not. I don't think we should vilify people for it, but I think we should just generally lean in the direction of sustainability. And I actually think solar is going to be a majority of Earth's energy generation in the future, and it's certainly trending that way. And so you get the solar power, combine that with batteries, so because obviously the sun doesn't shine at night, and then you use that to charge the electric cars, and you have a long-term sustainable solution. And that's what Tesla's trying to move things towards, and I think we've made a lot of progress in that regard. But when you look at our cars, we don't believe that environmentalism, that caring about the environment should mean that you have to suffer. So we make sure that our cars are beautiful, that they drive well, that they're fast, they're sexy. I mean, they're cool. In fact, literally, I mean, the sexy joke, Model S, Model 3, Model X, and Y spells out sexy. It's probably the most expensive joke out there. But I don't know, I like cheesy humor, so but I'm a big fan of, like, let's have an inspiring future, and let's work towards a better future, and we can do so without demonizing people.
I'm okay. It's very interesting. You use the word global warming, and today they use the word climate change, because you have some places that go up, and so they were getting themselves in a little trouble with the word global warming, because not every place is warming. Some places are going the opposite direction. But I'm sort of waiting for you to come up with solar panels on the roofs of your cars and on the trunks of the cars, and it just seems like something that at some point you will come up with. I'm sure you'll be the first. But it would seem that a solar panel on the roofs, on flat surfaces, on certain surfaces, might be good.
Yeah.
At least in certain areas of the country where you have the world, where you have the sun. But I would think, and I have no idea because that's not my world, but I would think that this would be something that would be interesting. But the one thing that I don't understand is that people talk about global warming or they talk about climate change, but they never talk about nuclear warming. And to me,
Sure.
that's an immediate problem because you have, as I said, 5 countries where you have major nuclear, and probably some others are getting there, and that's very dangerous. That's where you need a strong American president because you don't want to have this proliferation. But you have 5 countries and getting more. China is much less than us right now, but they're going to catch us sooner than people think. They're way lower. Russia and us are number one, and I mean, we're sort of tied. And China is far behind, but they're developing at a level that you're not surprised to hear very fast. They'll end up catching up, maybe even
Yeah.
surpassing. But to me, the biggest problem is not climate change. It's not, and everything's a problem, but it's degrees. To me, the big problem is the nuclear power. The power of nuclear is so great. And when I talk about I'll
Nuclear power
prevent
is
World,
underrated. It's
I'll
awesome.
prevent World War
Yeah.
III. I will, but the truth is that you have to, because this is no longer army tanks going back and forth and shooting at each other. This is a level of destruction and power that nobody's ever seen before.
Yeah, and actually, there's the bad side of nuclear, which is a nuclear war, very bad side. But there's also, I think, nuclear electricity generation is underrated.
You're right.
And it's actually, people have this fear of nuclear electricity generation, but it's actually one of the safest forms of electricity generation. It's just a huge misunderstanding. And if you look at the injuries and deaths, caused by, say, I mean, I'm not going to try to pick on coal mining, but just any kind of mining operation. And there's a certain number of injuries and deaths per year. And you compare that to nuclear. Nuclear is actually way better. So it's underrated as an electricity source, and I think it's something that's worth reconsidering. But there's so much regulation that people can't get it done. So that
maybe they'll have to change the name. The name is it's a rough name. There are some areas
it's rough
when you see what happened in
bad branding. The
we have to rebrand it. We'll have to give it a good name. We'll name it after you or something. No, it has a branding problem. When you see what happened,
it does have a branding problem.
When you see what happened in Japan, where they say you won't be able to go on the land for about 3,000 years. Did you ever see that? And in Russia, where they had the problem, where they there's a lot of bad things happened, and they have a problem. And they say that in 2,000 years, people will start to occupy the land again. You realize it's pretty bad.
No, that's not true.
But you're right about it. It's amazing.
It's actually not that bad. So like after Fukushima happened in Japan, like people were asking me in California, are we worried about like a nuclear cloud coming from Japan? I'm like, no, that's crazy. It's not even dangerous in Fukushima. I actually flew there and ate locally grown vegetables on TV to prove it. And I donated a solar water treatment, a solar powered system for a water treatment plant. And
but you haven't been feeling so well lately, and I'm worried about it.
No, but I mean,
I'm only kidding.
It's fine, It's like Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed, but now they're like full cities again. So it's really not something that
That's right.
So it's not as scary as people think, basically. But let's see. I mean, are there some other topics we should touch on? Like lawfare. I think we need to be concerned about
what they've done to this country.
Obviously,
yeah. Well, we just won the big case in Florida. This was a Biden administration did something that's never been done in this country, and that's go after their political opponent, me, with this nonsense and just nonsense. And the big case in Florida we won, but they always pick a judge and a jury, and they use local DAs, they use the local attorney generals, like Fani, Fani, spelled Fani, Fani, and it's all a big hoax, and it's all run from there, like in Manhattan. One of the top people from the Justice Department went in, ran Manhattan, ran the state. The Letitia James deal was run by a person from the Department of Justice, Biden. They've never done this before, and they set up a very bad precedent. It's called lawfare, warfare. It's a terrible thing, and never happened in our country. It does happen in banana republics and third world countries, but it's never happened. And the incredible thing is it actually drove my numbers up because people see, fortunately I have a platform like you, or, in all fairness, like a conversation like this, where I can talk about it and people understand. I mean, you fight for election integrity and you end up getting indicted because you're fighting for election integrity. And when the day comes that you can't fight for election integrity, you don't have a country anymore. So what happens? What
Yeah.
happens is they went after their political opponent, me. Now Biden's, close to vegetable stage, in my opinion. Okay, I looked at him today on the beach, and I said, why would anybody allow him? The guy could barely walk. Why would anybody allow him? Does
Yeah.
he have a political advisor that thinks this looks good? He thinks this looks good because it looks so bad, and it's ridiculous. I mean, and he's been doing
Right.
that
Right.
for a long time. He can't lift the chair. The chair weighs about 3 ounces. It's meant for children and old people to lift, and he can't
Yeah.
lift it. The whole thing is
Well,
crazy.
he's clearly not, I mean, he's clearly like, we just don't have a president right
You
now.
don't
That's
have a
just obviously
president,
the
and
case.
she's going to be worse than him because she is a San Francisco liberal who destroyed San Francisco, and then as Attorney General, she destroyed California. You talk about location, and we're talking about the sun and the water and all. There's nothing better than California. She has destroyed that. She was the original DA. She was the original in San Francisco. She was the original Attorney General in California. What she has done to California is, well, you know better than I do. You just left California for a lot of those reasons. And what she's done with crime, with cashless bail, where you kill somebody. I mean, we have states now you kill somebody and they let you out right away. I mean, you don't have to even put up, and then they never find the people unless they kill again, and then they let them out again. Our
Yeah.
country is becoming a very dangerous place. And she is a radical left San Francisco liberal. And now she's trying to protect. Now she's looking like she wants to be more Trump than Trump, if that's possible. I don't think it's possible, but she wants to be more Trump than
Well,
Trump.
yeah.
I want a wall.
I think that's,
she
yeah.
wants to release all the
Yeah.
prisoners that are in detention. And some of these guys are really bad.
Right.
That just came
Yeah, I
out
just saw
today.
that.
She
Yeah.
doesn't want to build the wall, even though the walls work. Walls and wheels. In your business, everything you do is obsolete, almost, well, not the tunnels, but everything is obsolete. Even your rocket ships, they're like a month later, they're obsolete. You find a better way to. The only thing that's not obsolete is a wall and a wheel. And the wall, I built hundreds of miles of wall, and that's why we had such good numbers. I was going to add 200 miles. We bought it. We could have flipped it up in 3 weeks, and they sold it for 5 cents on the dollar. That meant, I said, wow, that means that they actually do want to have open borders. She wants to have open borders, and now she's going like she's tough on the border. It's such a lie.
Yeah, this is simply not true. This is simply not
No,
true.
and everybody
Yeah,
knows
it's
it's
simply
not
not
true.
true.
It's a disgrace that she
Yeah.
can say it.
No, I mean, obviously, what's happening sort of overnight is they're rewriting history and making Kamala sound like a moderate when in fact she is far left, like far left.
Worse than Bernie Sanders. She is considered more liberal by far than Bernie Sanders. She's a radical left lunatic, and if she's going to be our president, very quickly, you're not going to have a country anymore. And she'll go back to all of the things that she believes in. She believes in defunding the police. She believes in no fracking, zero. Now all of a sudden she's saying, no, I really want to see fracking. If they got in, the day she got in, she'll end fracking. And by the way, if people didn't think that, the lunatics that really believe in that, they won't vote for her. Like the Palestinians and Israel. She is so anti-Israel, and she's bad for both. Biden actually did something that was impossible. Both sides hate him, both sides. That was a hard thing to do, unification.
Yeah, no. I mean, Netanyahu came to give a talk to a joint Senate and House sitting, and I was there, and Kamala stood him up. What does that say?
I think it's highly disrespectful. And I say, if you're a Jewish person or if you believe in Israel, if you're a person that, is a very pro-Israel, if you vote for her, it's worse than Biden. And Biden was bad. But if you vote for her, you ought to have your head examined. And you see tonight, I mean, as we're doing this, I'm seeing reports coming that they expect an attack tonight or tomorrow from hundreds and maybe thousands of rockets. You know, their Iron Dome, as they call it, as we all call it, but their shield that they build, that can be swamped. We'll use a term that's
Yeah.
appropriate, swamped. But they
Yeah.
swamp it by shooting enough missiles. You know this better than anybody. By shooting enough missiles,
Sure.
they can't defend themselves. You know, they just obliterate the whole
Yeah.
place. And that's what some people think they're looking to do. And we have no leadership. There's no respect for the United States of America with these people. And I'm telling you,
Yeah.
she'll be worse than him because she's a believer
Yeah, no,
in
I
being
think you're right.
radical left, and he wasn't.
I think you're right. I mean, you really, it's important for the public that may be listening to this to look at Kamala's track record, before the last month, and say, is that a track record you agree with? And I think if you're an independent moderate, you definitely would not agree with it, because it is her behavior has been far left, and we're seeing just an overnight propaganda attempt to rewrite history and make it sound like Kamala's moderate when she in fact is not moderate.
Well, her
think
running mate approved, signed into legislation, tampons in boys' bathrooms. Okay, now that's all I have to hear. Tampons in boys' bathrooms, and that means she believes in that too. I mean, she picked this guy because he was the closest to her. A lot of people thought she'd pick sort of the opposite, but she picked an anti-Israel radical left person. But she is far worse, they say, than Bernie Sanders. If we have her as a president, if we have a Democrat at this moment as a president, I don't think our country can survive.
I think it's a massive. I think we're in massive trouble, frankly, with the Kamala administration, and that's my honest opinion. And I think really it's essential that you win for the good of the country for this election, and I mean that's understating my opinion. Now, you may have seen this, but I got a letter from the EU Commission, saying, to not have disinformation on during this discussion that we're having, and there's a lot of attempts to do censorship and to force censorship even on Americans from other countries, and what do you think about that?
Well, I know the European Union very well. They take great advantage of the United States in trade, as you know. We, through a different forum, NATO, we protect them. And yet, if you build a car in the United States, you can't sell it in Europe. You just can't sell it. It's impossible. The same thing with our farmers. Our farmers find it very difficult to do business. We have a deficit with them of $250 billion, which people don't know. It sounds so nice, the European Union, but let me tell you, they're not as tough as China, but they're bad. And I let them know it. And that's probably why they notified you. No, they don't treat our country well. We defend them, with Ukraine. So we're in for 250 billion, and they're in for about 71 billion, and they have the same size. If you add up the European nations that in terms of an economy, it's about the same size. Wouldn't you say as us? And they're in, and they're in much greater risk. They're right there. We have an ocean separating us from. In this case, the enemy would be Russia. It used to be for the Soviet Union, but let's assume they're close enough. And what happens is they're in for 70-something million. I think even less than that, billion, and we're in for about 250 billion, and it could be a lot higher than that. And I say, why aren't you going to equalize? Why aren't they paying what we're paying? And they're in much more, it's much more important for them because of the fact that, they're right near there. I mean, they're all sort of in that location. We're not. But they should, and I did it with NATO. There were only 7 countries that were paid up in NATO out of 28 at the time. And the United States the United States was subsidizing NATO, tremendously subsidizing NATO. And I said, I went in and I said, you got to pay up. If you don't pay up, we're not going to defend you any longer. I took a lot of heat, but you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in. And
I think a lot of the public isn't aware of the fact that the United States pays a disproportionate share of the NATO expenses.
And then we get
even though,
taken
like,
advantage of on trade. So think
yeah,
about it.
well, I mean, the point of NATO is defending Europe, and it's it's like, then okay, well, why is the United States paying disproportionately more to defend Europe than Europe? That doesn't make sense. That's unfair, and that is an appropriate thing to address.
Well, when you talk about
So
cost cutting and savings and everything else, I mean, honestly, look, there's nobody that feels worse about the Ukraine situation than I do, because I know it would have never happened. I know Zelensky. He was very honorable to me, because when they went with the Russia hoax and they said I had a phone call with him, he said it was a perfect phone call. It was a great phone call. He could have grandstanded and, said, oh, he was very threatening. He said, no, it was a very nice phone call. I called him up to congratulate him on his win, and you end up getting impeached because these people are lunatics. I was talking about the difference from the people within and the enemies on the outside. In many cases, the people from within are more dangerous for our country than the Russians and the Chinas. If you have a smart president, you're not going to have a problem with them. You're going to do things.
yeah,
Now, they've taken advantage
yeah,
of us
absolutely.
incredibly, but you're going to do things with the right person.
Yeah, well, I think it's obvious that you're a believer and an advocate of free speech, because during your first term as president, you were attacked relentlessly every day, often very unfairly, with with false attacks, and you didn't try to shut down the media. You didn't try to inhibit their freedom of speech, and I think that says a lot.
Well, the good thing is that you and I have, and some people, very few, we can get the word out. Although sometimes it's hard because they don't want to print it, like we're having a great conversation right now. Kamala wouldn't have this conversation. She can't, because she's not
No.
smart. She's not a smart person, by the way. She can't have this conversation. And Biden, we don't even have to talk about it. I mean, he couldn't have this conversation. He would have given up on the first half of a question. He would have walked out. He would have said, where am I? Where am I going? So anyway, but
Yeah.
no, he wouldn't have this.
That's true.
Not a lot of people would have this conversation, but we cover a lot of territory. But the beauty is that we can have a conversation, and
Yes, you
I'm
can actually
able
have a
to get it out without, because I get treated unfairly.
This is a really big point. You can actually have a conversation with you.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
And you can't have a conversation with Biden or Kamala. It's like it's not possible.
That's true.
So this is like talking to an NPC.
No.
So it's just impossible.
Well, but think of it. We need a man or person who's unbelievably sharp in order to stop all the nuclear danger and all the dangers that I'm talking about. And I got along with all these. I got along with Kim Jong-un. We had dinner, we had everything, and he really liked me, and I got along with him really well. By the way, he's the absolute boss over there. A lot of people said, "Oh, do you think he really?"
That's for
let
sure.
me tell you, I saw things that you don't want to know about. He is the boss. But we had a good relationship, and he doesn't like Biden. He considers him a stupid man. He said he's a stupid man. Well, at least he speaks his mind. But in this country, you're not sort of allowed to say it, but I guess you are. You should be allowed to say it if it's true. But we need smart people, and we need people that have an ability to lead. And she doesn't have that ability. Can you imagine? Now, Chairman Xi very well. Can you imagine her and him negotiating, or even standing together? It is, the whole concept is ridiculous. She is terrible. She's terrible. But she's getting a free ride. I saw a picture of her on Time Magazine today. She looks like the most beautiful actress ever to live. It was a drawing. And actually, she looked very much like our great first lady, Melania. She didn't look like Camilla. That's right. But of course, she's a beautiful woman. So we'll leave it at that, right?
Yeah, well, maybe like, I think part of what people in America want to feel excited and inspired about the future. They want to feel like the future is going to be better than the past, and that America is going to do things that are greater than we've done in the past, reach new heights that make you proud to be an American, and excited about the future.
They want the American dream back. They want the American dream back. More important than anything else. It's like, you don't have that today, because the people, they've been just sucked. They see incompetent people running our, the Biden thing is very interesting. People just found him to be incompetent. And when I debated him, I was like, is this for real? It was
Yeah, it was just absurd. But I think there are like some grand projects that we could do. I mean, I think like we could build a base on the moon. We could send American astronauts to Mars. We
right.
could build high speed
Yep.
connections that are more advanced than anything else in the world between our cities, so people have fast transport. Um, it's possible to solve traffic with tunnels.
That's right.
We already made great progress in Vegas doing that, and and just do things that are exciting and inspiring and make the future feel like it's better than the past.
Well, I saw
And
what you
like,
did in Vegas, and I'll tell you, it was amazing. I got to see. I took a big glimpse at it, and it's incredible. It's incredible, and you could do that all over. You could do that all over. It's deep.
yeah,
You don't even need much structure. Assuming you're in the right areas.
no, it's straightforward.
It's amazing.
So like I think we could do some things that like China's got incredible high speed rail between its cities, but I think it's actually possible with tunnels if with deregulation, with an ability to actually where it's like legal to actually do the tunnels. Then you could have high speed tunnels that are actually better than anything else in the world for high speed transport between cities, and that would be something that Americans can say, "Wow, okay, we've got something that's cooler than anyone else in the
Yeah.
world." That's the kind of thing that makes you proud to be an
And
American.
much safer than surface trains, where there is a danger there. With people, with crazy
Yeah,
people. It's much safer, much better. And it's sad because I've seen some of the greatest trains. I find it fascinating, and I've seen the systems and how they work, and the bullet trains they call them, I guess. And they
yeah,
they go unbelievably fast, unbelievably comfortable, with no problems. And we don't have anything like that in this country, not even close. And
yeah.
it doesn't make sense that we don't. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think also like there's I'm kind of hopping on the excess regulation, but I think something that um that I think people can generally understand is that what happens with laws and regulations is that there's more and more of them every year, and unless there's a process to clean them up, eventually everything becomes
You're right.
illegal, and that actually it slows down the development of new technologies. I mean, if you take the sort of like I think there's room for some reform at the FDA for
Yeah.
improving the speed with which we approve drugs that could help save lives and improve people's
Yeah.
lives. And
I worked very hard
and
on that.
that,
We got that
yeah,
down to the lowest number ever, and we got therapeutics approved in the FDA that people can't even believe the speed. But I took them on. I don't think they like me too much, but I got things approved in the FDA at numbers that they wouldn't believe. And it's a very bureaucratic group. Actually, it's a fine group of people in many cases. I got to know a lot of them, but I was pushing them really hard for Regeneron, for so many different things that were really pretty amazing. But the FDA takes too long. It's 12 years to get a product approved. I got it down to 4, and I
yeah,
got some things done very quickly. But it's really something that is going to have to be worked on because it takes too long. Just takes too long.
yeah. It just takes too long, and it's you end up in the same with the approval, but it's just it takes years instead of something that I think could potentially take
Yeah,
months, and that improves people's lives. I
yeah,
think but I just wanted to hop on this point that like there has to be an active process for reducing rules and regulations, because otherwise they just keep building up every year, and
yep,
you get like hardening of the arteries, and eventually everything's illegal or takes forever, and then we just we just ossify as a society. Uh, we can't make any
yeah.
progress, and that's it's a really big
Well,
deal.
Elon, just
So
getting back to the FDA for 1 second, I got something done called Right to Try. This is where you can go in, and if you're terminally ill, you can use a space age, medicine or whatever it may be. We have the best doctors, the best labs in the world. We really do. And but people would go to other countries because you couldn't use the product, even if they thought it worked, because it's going through the FDA. I got it approved
yeah,
where you can
yeah,
you basically you look, nobody wanted, the doctors didn't want it because of the liability, the country didn't want it, our country, because they didn't want to get sued. These are people terminally ill. The insurance companies didn't want it, and the pharmaceutical companies, nobody wanted it. I got everybody into a room, and we came up with an agreement that you won't get sued. And also, they didn't want it on their record. If somebody's terminally ill and they die after taking a drug, they didn't want that on their record. So we set a separate list. If somebody was, so it wouldn't count as a negative.
Yeah.
Okay. And as you know, we got it
Yeah.
done. We have saved right to try. They've been trying to get this done for 58
Yeah.
years. And it sounds simple, but it wasn't, because of, I mean, the insurance companies, nobody wanted it, but we got it done.
Sure.
Somebody you sign a document that you're not going to sue the insurance companies, the country, you're not going to sue anybody. And we got it done. And we're saving tens of thousands of lives. Right to try. Hopefully you never need it. But if you
Yeah.
do, you don't have to travel to Asia. People,
Right.
if they had money, they go to Asia,
Yeah,
they
sure.
go to Europe. If they don't have money, they go home and die. That's what happened. They'd go home and die.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and actually, to give Europe some props here, it's like if a drug is approved in Europe, which has a crazy amount of regulations, it should obviously be approved in the U.S.
Yeah.
I mean, they get more regulations than we do. So why would a drug be approved in Europe and not in the U.S.? That's crazy.
Well, we did it. We did something that really, they've been trying to do it for 50 years, and they just couldn't get it done. And I got it done. And it's really something. But you're right. Some people go to Europe because a drug isn't approved here, but it's approved in Europe. And it's a drug that, generally speaking, would work. It's pretty crazy.
Absolutely.
You're right.
And I think so long as people are properly informed of the pros and cons, and like these are the risks, this is the risk, and like you make your own decision.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, I think just, in sort of closing up, and by the way, I'm looking at the numbers. You got a lot of people listening. I hope you don't get nervous, because you got a lot of people listening to you right now, like 60 million or something. What is that number? It's crazy. It's amazing how you can see that right away. What is the number? Wow. What is it?
Well,
wow.
I think in terms of people
that's bigger than you said. You said 25, and you're much more than double that number, 25 million. I think you're going to be 60 or 70. And I guess over a period of time, hey, I congratulate you. Do I get paid for this or not?
Well, I think actually in terms of the number of people that will hear this conversation over the next few days to weeks, it's going to be hundreds.
That's what they say. Yeah, that's good. Well, look, it's an honor. I just asked this: are you better off now, or were you better off when I was president? Nobody's better off now. People, we put out polls on that, and nobody's better off now. Inflation has killed it. And, they also feel very unsafe. You look at what's going on with a lot of different things. You look at the riots we had at the colleges over, I mean, it's ridiculous, but all of the riots, they just feel unsafe. And now they really feel unsafe because you have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. Maybe I'll call it Kamala migrant crime. But
I mean, with all these things, I always try to get to the ground truth by just asking people. And my mom lives in New York, and I was like, Mom, have any of your friends, been attacked or assaulted? And she said, yeah, 3 of her friends in 3 separate incidents were assaulted just in recent months, just walking around the streets of New York. And I said, well, what happened to the people that assaulted them? Oh, nothing. They got away. Like, and they just know
they always get away.
Nothing's gonna, and they don't even bother reporting it because they know that they're not going to, people are not going to get prosecuted. They just let, violent criminals out in New York.
The only one that gets prosecuted is Donald Trump. They prosecute Trump.
Yeah, I mean, it's just obviously messed up.
Oh, it's terrible.
If violent criminals are getting off scot-free, and meanwhile the New York spending massive resources prosecuting you, and it's like, what's this? And I think the sort of sensible public looks at this and says, what the heck's going on here? This is obviously abuse of the legal system. The legal system is supposed to be protecting the public from violent criminals, and it should be obviously allowing the public to make their own decision about who should be president, as opposed to some legal case.
Once they start this precedent, because this can go on with the next one. I mean, this is a very bad precedent, what they're doing in terms of, going after their political opponent. And that's all it is. It's going after their political opponent. And then you get a judge who's, a strong Democrat. And I'm being nice when I say that, in many cases, crooked as hell. but you get a judge and you go into an area where a Republican gets 3 or 4% of the vote, and you'll have a jury pool
Yeah,
with people that hate Republicans or hate. It could
sure,
also be the other way,
of
though,
course.
because it could start the other way in areas where they hate
Exactly.
Democrats, and you get into a
Yep.
Pandora's box. It's a very dangerous thing for this country, and a very dangerous thing even for the state. New York City is
Yep.
losing. New York
Absolutely.
City and state lose a lot of business over what they did to me, because these people say we don't want that to happen to us. That's no justice system. You have an unfair system of
Yes.
justice, and it's costing New York State a tremendous amount of money. People are leaving and companies are leaving, and they won't come back. So, all of that stuff is important. But the economy now is the big thing, and we can turn that economy up so fast, and people are going to be back again. We're going to get rid of
Yeah,
inflation.
I think there's a lot of
Right.
opportunity. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So
And I just want to I want to congratulate you. You've done an amazing job. You have definitely got a fertile mind. We can talk. You and I can talk about rockets.
It's kind of you to say. Thank you.
Tunnels. We can talk about tunnels and rockets and electric cars. So many things. And now you're into the AI, and that's going to be another beauty, I'll say. So
Yeah.
it's an amazing thing you've done, Elon. It's an amazing thing, and I
Well,
congratulate you.
I mean, thank you. And well, I mean, I just say here, here's to an exciting, inspiring future that people can look forward to and be optimistic and excited about what happens next. And that's the kind of future that I think you will bring as president, and that's why I endorse you.
Well, I appreciate that. That endorsement meant a lot to me. Not all endorsements mean that much, to be honest. Your endorsement meant a lot. And, we have a phrase, make America great again. It's pretty simple, but it really says that we want to make America great again. And we can do it. We can do it now. But if we were going to suffer another 4 years like we've suffered for the last 4 years, I'm not sure the country can ever come back. That's how bad it is. It's so bad. We have to do a lot of things.
I think that's a very real risk.
Yeah, it's a big risk.
That's a very real risk.
Yeah.
And it's, I'd just like to note to people listening, like I've not been very political before. And if you look at my record, I've actually been, I'm not like, sometimes they try to paint me as like a far right guy, which is absurd because I'm like making electric vehicles and, solar and batteries, helping with the environment. And I actually, I supported Obama. I stood in line for 6 hours to shake Obama's hand when he was running for president. And, so it's not like I'm like some sort of dyed-in-the-wool long-term Republican. I'd call myself, historically a moderate Democrat. But now I feel like we're really at a critical juncture for the country. I think a lot of people thought, the Biden administration would be a moderate administration, but it's not. And obviously, we're just going to see an even further left administration with Kamala. That's my honest opinion. I mean, her dad is literally. I mean, she was brought up as an actual. Her dad is a Marxist economist. You can Google it. I mean, it's not a. We're not making this up. That's how she was brought up. So, and we want to have a future that is prosperous. And I think we're just at this critical juncture. And I think this is a case of the America is kind of at a fork in the road, and
True.
And I think it will take if the path to, like you are the path to prosperity, and I think Kamala is the opposite. Then that's my honest opinion. I'm gonna get attacked like crazy, and I've also experienced quite a bit of lawfare myself. But I'm just trying to tell people my honest opinion, and I haven't been really active in politics before. And I'm just trying to point out that my track record historically has been moderate, if not moderate, slightly left. And so this is to people out there who are in the moderate camp to say, I think you should support Donald Trump for president. And I think it's actually a very important junction in the road, and we're in deep trouble if it goes the other way.
Well, I want to thank you. And, I actually always did think of you as somewhat left. I must say that. So it's
Yeah.
even more of an honor to have your endorsement. I know how strong you feel about it. But, when you think of her, San Francisco 15 years ago, I had a great friend, Bob Tish. He said it's the greatest city in America. And now it's almost not livable there. And California likewise. And she was involved in the destruction of San Francisco and the destruction of California. And she will be involved in the destruction of our country if people are so unwise as to elect her. And I hope that doesn't happen. And I hope the elections are going to be run honestly. And we're going to turn this country around. We're going to do things that, and we can do it fairly quickly. And we have to get rid of the criminals that have been, given to us by other countries as they laugh. They laugh at us. They think we're stupid to accept these people. These are radical, stone cold killers in many cases and terrorists. And they're in our country by the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
And we have to take them out.
Yeah. I mean, if I could summarize it, perhaps, I think these are issues that I think most people in America would agree with, which is that we want safe and clean cities, we want secure borders, we want sensible government spending, we want to restore both the perception and reality of respect in the judicial system. Just stop the lawfare, and I think that's like. And how are those even right-wing positions? I think those are just that's just common sense, and that's. I mean, would you agree with that?
100%. I don't understand. The whole, they call it progressive. They don't like the word liberal anymore, but call it liberal or progressive. I don't understand how somebody could say that it's okay for them to empty prisons into our country. And again, I told you their crime rates all over the world are going way down, which makes sense. In fact, the next time what we'll do is, if something happens with this election, which would be a horror show, we'll meet the next time in Venezuela, because it'll be a far safer place to meet than our country. Okay, so we'll go, you and I will go, and we'll have a meeting and dinner in Venezuela, because that's what's happening. Their crime rate's coming down and our crime rate's going through the roof. And it's so simple. And you haven't seen anything yet, because these people have come into our country and they're just getting acclimated. And they don't know about being politically correct law enforcement or lack of law enforcement. And our police, I have to just end with this. We have great police. We have great law enforcement, but they're not allowed to do their job. They have to be able to do their job without being destroyed.
Well, absolutely. And it's obviously demoralizing if you're a police officer risking your life to arrest violent criminals who could kill you and do kill you sometimes. And then you arrest the violent criminal, and then the DA, doesn't prosecute and just let the guy out. Well, then, like, why should a police officer risk their life to arrest a violent felon?
Well, even worse, Elon,
if nothing's going to happen.
Even worse, they prosecute the police officer. They go after it and they prosecute the police officer, and they take away his pension. They take away his job. He loses his family. He loses his house.
Well, I thought it was very telling, like incredibly telling, that when there was that case where sort of a gang of thugs beat up police officers. I think it was in Times Square in New York, and then nothing happened to those guys. They were let out, zero bail, and I think a bunch of them were given free tickets to California. Well, what is I mean, that is a gross indignity against the United States, and that's how, I mean, this is insane. Like, have we lost all pride? How can such a thing be allowed to occur?
I've never seen anything. We see where they get shot. It's a very dangerous profession, but it's something they're very proud of, and they want to be able to do their job. But I've seen them get shot. I've seen a lot of things, but I've never seen where these guys are standing in the middle of a big street, everybody watching them, and they're literally boxing, like punching, stand up fighting a police officer. There were two of them, and you had about six of these guys, and they're punching the hell out of them. And in their own country, they would be dead if they did that. They'd be shot. They would be shot instantly. And, they come from these countries, and it's taking them a while to realize that we don't do that in this country. But in their own country, if they stood on a street and had a fight with a police officer, they would be shot. There's no political correctness. And it's such a sad, it's such a sad thing to see. And that's the reason you have crime, by the way, because we don't do anything about it.
Yeah, we just cannot have a situation where our police officers are beaten up on camera by a gang of illegal immigrants, and then nothing happens to the guys that beat up the cops. I mean, and they're let out. This is unacceptable.
Well, we're going to change it, and we're going to get them out of the country. When I first got involved, they said you couldn't get them back to these countries. You couldn't take them back. In the case of Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, some others, you couldn't get them back. And I said, really? Oh, you can't get it back? because under Obama, he couldn't get them back. They'd fly them in, and they'd put planes on the runways in these countries so you couldn't land a plane. They'd bring them back. And the generals told me, sir, we can't bring them back. The countries won't accept MS-13 gang members. They won't accept them. And I said, really, how much do we pay these various countries in terms of economic aid, which is also somewhat ridiculous? And the answer was $750 million. I said, good. Tell them they're in default. They're delinquent. We're not paying them anymore because they won't accept it. And you know what happened? They all called me, every one of them. They said, we would be honored to take them back, sir. We would be honored. It was so easy. But it's one of those things. And we got them back. We took in so many, the MS-13 is probably the worst gangs in the world. They're the most vicious, violent. We took them out of here by the thousands and got them out of here. And their countries took them back. And because I said, you're not getting any more economic aid. And once I said that, they were nice. They wouldn't take them back for Obama. They wouldn't take them back for anybody. And now we have a problem because we have this guy, and they don't take him back anymore with Biden because they don't respect him.
Yeah. It's just gotta be done. We just can't have whether they're citizens or not citizens. We can't have, because they won't prosecute citizens either, not just illegals. So if it's, you can't have violent, repeat violent offenders that are not that don't get incarcerated.
That's right.
Because they will obviously, by definition, continue to hurt people. And I think where part of this comes from is that there's and I do sort of consider myself liberal in some ways. I mean, it's just that you want to have empathy for people. Obviously, you want to have empathy for people. I totally agree with that. You want to have empathy, but you also have to have empathy for the victims of the criminals. And if you just have empathy for the criminals, it's actually shallow empathy. It's not real. You're not thinking. You're one layer deep empathy. You got to say, like, what if you don't incarcerate this person? Who are they going to hurt? They might kill someone, they might rape someone. If you don't incarcerate them, you have to have empathy for the victims. And there's a lack of empathy for the victims of the criminals, and too much empathy for the criminals. It doesn't make sense. That's why you want to have deep empathy for society as a whole, not shallow empathy for criminals.
Right. And we have to give our police officers the dignity and the respect that they deserve. And we have to let them do their job. They can do a great job, but we have to let them do their job. And if we don't do that, it's going to all disappear. There's never been a society like this where you're allowed to do anything you want and nothing happens. And I'm talking about violent crime. And it's going to get more violent because these are really, really violent people. And we're going to get them out of our country, and we're going to get them back to because they were sent here by the presidents and by the various people that run those countries. And I know every one of those guys. And they're smart people, and they're streetwise people. And they really think that the USA is stupid. They think we're run by stupid people, and they happen to be right. But when I was there, we had no problem. We got them out. We took out thousands of MS-13 gang members. We brought them back. And now, again, it's the same old story. We don't do it. And they actually gave them a big increase in aid. They raised it up to billions of dollars, and they get nothing for it. So, I hope everybody's going to vote for Trump, and we're going to get this country straight. Yeah. And I didn't need this. I'm like you. I didn't need this. I had a very nice life. I didn't need to go through court systems and go through all the other stuff and run at the same time. I have to run. I have to go through fake trials with, in some cases, corrupt judges, totally corrupt judges. I didn't need it. I had a nice life. I have great locations. I have beautiful oceans that I have places. But I felt it was important. And if I had to do it over again, you probably think I'm crazy for doing it, actually. But if I had to do it over again, I would have done it over again, because this is so much more important than me or my life. We're going to save this country. This country is going down. And these people are bad people that we're running against, and they're liars. They make statements. They do things that are so bad. They say they're going to make a strong border. They say they've been great on the border, and they've been the worst in history. They say they're going to stop crime.
Like, the facts speak for themselves.
It's so incredible.
Speak for themselves. Like it's got to the point where people just don't even bother reporting crime in a lot of cities because they know nothing is going to happen. that's what I hear anecdotally from people all the time. So it's just my values. I'm just saying to people out there, like the things I think are important for the future is like we've got to have safe cities, we've got to have secure borders, we've got to have sensible spending, and we've got to have deregulation, and
Right.
so we can have a prosperous future. And then we want to have some exciting, sort of moonshot projects that people can get fired up about, and that's the future I'm looking for. And I'm pro environment, but I'm not against. I'm not like I don't think we should vilify the oil and gas industry because they're keeping civilization going right now, and but I do think we want to move at a reasonable speed towards a sustainable energy economy. Those are my values, and I think and so I mean that's why I'm supporting you for president.
Well, I
So
appreciate it. We're going to give incentive to companies to come into our country, not to leave our country. We're going to be giving tremendous incentives. We want companies to build here, not to build in other locations. And we want to create jobs. And again, it's about the American dream. You don't hear about the American dream anymore, Elon. You don't hear. You're the American dream in the truest sense, but you don't hear about the American dream anymore. And you're going to hear about it. People, they need that incentive to go out
yeah,
and do it. And they're going to love their lives. I mean, they're going to look forward to getting up in the morning and going to a job that they love, not a job that they can't stand, or not any job at all where they have no money, where they literally have no money. And then they end up with violence and lots of other problems. No, we're going to do some great things. And I learned a lot in the first. We had a great economy and all of that. We rebuilt the military, we did so much. But I also learned the best people. I learned the good people, the smart people, the dumb people, the people that can do things, the people, you learn. When I first came in, I tell people I was in Washington, D.C. only 17 times, according to the fake news media. I was in 17 times. I never stayed over. And you don't know people. You rely on other people to give you names, and then you realize the people you relied on weren't so good. Now, we had great people, but we also had some where I wouldn't have, used them had I known. Now I know everybody. And I think we're going to really turn things around fast. We have no choice. Otherwise, we're not going to have a country. And I really appreciate this. To me, it's been a lot of fun being with you. You're an amazing guy. You've done an incredible job and a great inspiration to people, a great inspiration. And I hope you keep going and just continue to do well. And we're going to have a big election coming up. And I think November 5th will be the most important day in the history of our country. I think that election will be the most important election. And I think it'll end up being maybe the most important day in the history of our country, because if we don't win, I just feel so sorry for everybody.
No, I think we're at a fork in the road of destiny of civilization, and I think we need to take the right path, and I think you're the right path. So I think that's what it comes down to.
Thank you very much, Elon. It's a great honor, and we'll do it again sometime. And it's been really fun, and I hope you got a lot of viewers. I hear you got a lot, but I hope you got I know you got a lot of them. So I appreciate it. I'll see you soon.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Elon. Thank you very much. Bye.